I had always been a lover of language, a lover of words and their versatility. With words, I could say anything, do anything, be anything. At least I thought I could. To most, I'm known as Ana Campbell, but the people of the internet only knew me as Anagram. I likened myself to a hacker of sorts, having the ability to make the words fall in just the right places, just the right patterns to manipulate people however I wished. Words were my code, the local library my lair, and my target, the motherboard of the human mind. It was an ordinary day filled with ordinary people, and I was typing away at the library computer when someone tapped my shoulder. Anagram, they said. I froze. I turned slowly in my chair, carefully covering the story typed up on my computer screen. I was only signing off on the latest update of my story. Like always, just an anagrammed version of the next update title. Could they have realized my true identity? I'm sorry, I replied with a slight waver in my voice. It was the new library aide. I knew she was around my age, but I'd never seen her at school. But I have no idea what on earth you are talking about. I tucked my long coat sleeves from my hands, wringing them nervously. Those were anagrams, weren't they? She asked. My shoulders sagged in relief as I nodded. She didn't know who I was. Sorry to bother you, but I notice you come here just about every day and you only ever use the computer. I'm not such a big fan of reading, I admitted. She laughed, and I wished I could disappear in my coat. My name's Anna. What's yours? There had seemed to be no other way to go than move the conversation along. I'm Kirsten, she chirped. The librarian sent us a sour look, so Kirsten lowered her voice to a whisper. So, why don't you like to read? What do you do in the library, then? I stuck my hands in my pockets and studied the dusty gray strands in the carpet. My feet couldn't even touch the ground on these library stools. I wondered why I hadn't noticed it before. Oh, do you not have a computer at home? Kirsten blurts. I looked up, studying her expression as she turned a shade of tomato red. Sorry, that was horribly rude of me. No worries, I smiled, voice rasping from disuse. I do have a computer at home, but my mom picks me up here. Gives me time to get my homework done. As for why I don't read, it's just authors always get it wrong. It's like I know I could do better. I faltered, my rant grinding to a halt. My mom tapped on the glass of the library windows. Kristen followed my gaze, and I was sure I saw some disappointment flicker in her eyes. It's your mom, isn't it? She sighed. She didn't say it as a question, but I nodded nonetheless. See you tomorrow? I'm basically here every day of the week. I gotta get to work. With all my talking, it looks like my boss is gonna skin me alive. She jabbed a finger at the annoyed librarian. I feel a spark of hope. Maybe I was actually making a friend. I hopped off the stool and grabbed the backpack resting at my feet. When I met my mom outside the window, I sent Kirsten a small smile and a wave. But Kirsten didn't see them, because Kirsten was too busy reading the screen of my computer. Who's that? My mom asked. I waved her question away, my stomach twisting into knots. Kirsten looked up at me, and for a second our eyes met. Her eyes were filled with some emotion, with confusion. No one, I muttered, ushering my mom towards the car. We need to hurry before the traffic gets bad. Though she had a look of slight puzzlement on her face, my mom listened. It wasn't until my last class the following day that I realized I had to do something about Kirsten. By the look she'd give me, it was possible, no, certain, that she'd recognize my username. As Anagram, I had already gathered thousands of readers. I suppose it was only a matter of time before I came across one of them. Anna, a voice asked. I sighed. Miss Patterson stood in front of my desk, holding paper out to me. Tentatively, I took it. Anna, I know you don't like to talk much, but I've seen your writing. I looked down at the paper in my hands. It was a sign-up sheet for a speech competition. I tried to hand it back. I'm not interested, Miss Patterson, I mumbled. Being a language lover, I should have loved English class. Unfortunately, with the writing came the reading. Why couldn't people see it? With every book I read came the thought that I could have done better. People just didn't see how out of order everything was, how strange, how wrong. Okay, Anna, but at least keep the flyer. Maybe you'll want to take a second look at it later. Miss Patterson sighed with a look of defeat. She was always trying to get me to try things like this. Reluctantly, I slipped the flyer in my backpack. I could recycle it later. When I finally arrived at the library after school that day, I peered into the windows, hoping to see Kirsten gone. But she stayed sitting bored at the checkout desk, absent-mindedly twirling a tacky feather pen with her hand. And somehow I mustered the courage to go inside. Hi, I whispered. I hoped she wouldn't hear, and she almost didn't. The feather pen fell to the floor, and she made some excuse to the librarian. Racing out from behind the counter, she surprised me with a hug. What was that for? I didn't think I'd see you again, Kristen replied honestly. She shrugged and swept some of the messy flyaways of her ponytail behind her ear. I like books, but it's awfully boring here without you. She helped me get off my backpack, which was quite difficult with all the layers of winter clothing. I doubt that. Maybe we should quiet down, I murmured. After all, it was a library. Now why do we need to do that? Kristen grinned, almost yelling. She spun around in circles. The library is completely empty. I guess she had a point. I'd forgotten the library was almost always empty on Fridays. The librarian on this shift didn't seem to mind the noise much either. So, I said in a normal voice, talking so loud seemed so strange, especially in a library of all places. You know about me? Kristen nodded. I won't tell a soul, she promised. What I just don't get is, why don't you tell everyone your anagram? You'd be famous, among us kids anyways. I stayed silent. We sat down at one of the empty tables, and I dropped my backpack on top, opening it to pull out my writing notebook. The flyer slipped onto the table. We both looked at it. I think I'll go recycle this now, I said, reaching for the paper, but Kirsten got to it first. You're going to do it, right? She prompted after reading the flyer. I looked down and stayed silent once more, just like I always had. I see that flicker of disappointment yet again. Seconds passed by in silence. The seconds stretched to minutes, then an hour. I dutifully start my homework without responding. Eventually, Kirsten gets up, letting the flyer flutter down to the tabletop. It wasn't much longer before my mom arrived. I finished all of my homework that day, but that was the last I ever spoke to Kirsten, the library aide. Then I thought nothing of it. Kirsten was caring about things she shouldn't anyhow. I didn't need to befriend her, just like I'd never need to talk in front of people. I would get by. So how's that girl from yesterday? My mom asked as I got in the car that day. Glancing at the library windows, I spotted Kirsten looking after. Again, eyes filled with an emotion, a familiar emotion, disappointment. Well, are you two becoming friends? At my mom's further prompting, I met her eyes and lied. No one, I answered easily because I actually believed it. Nobody of consequence, at least. Yet another lie. Though I didn't realize it right then, but Kirsten was someone of consequence. Huge consequence. She had tried to make a connection that websites and Wi-Fi couldn't, in doing so breaking down my barrier of silence, a barrier that I would find hard to rebuild, a barrier I wouldn't want to rebuild. But still, I asked my mom to pick me up from school after that, and I didn't do the speech competition that year, or the next. It wasn't until high school that I finally did it, when I realized that yes, I was like a hacker, and so was everyone else. Everyone has their own signature codes, signature patterns. To be truly a good hacker, I'd have to learn a new kind of language. I'd have to learn to understand everybody else's.